Welcome to this episode of Cuss N Discuss, the roundtable version of Ask the Horse Trainer a Question. Today's topic is going to be the horse industry and finances. How we deal with it, what we do to save money, what we're picky about, what we look forward to, how the money gets spent. And on today's panel, we've got Flynn Stewart, sale horse fitter, myself, horse trainer, Ginger Duke, still a professional trick rider, and Mark Lyon, still the man with the stash. So let's open it up today and let's just talk about finances, right? What do we do in the horse world when we get a check, right? How do we pinch the pennies? How do we save the money? How do we turn it into a business plan that will make it profitable for us in the future, right? Because I know I get in trouble for being too picky or OCD or anal or whatever way you want to be because of the way I hang up halters and the way that I hang up bridles and the way I do all these things. But to me, they're all done for a very specific reason, which we'll get into here in a little bit, right? Because that's a whole nother show on its own. So whenever you get, I guess the easiest way to start, right? So let's just say you get a sale horse and you sold this horse for $10,000, okay? How do you divide up the money? Where do you put the pennies? How do you save it? How do you spend it? You know, what do you look forward to in the future?
So a little bit depends on, like, for sale horses, you know, for me, most likely it's a prospect that I've bought or a horse that I've had for a while and I've trained it up and I'm thinking, you know, it's time for that horse to graduate. Maybe somebody offers me enough money that I'm thinking, I'd take that. And so then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give 10% back to God, because believe me, if His angels weren't watching over me, I would be in a world of hurt. Because I mean, riding horses is not an easy deal. And so anyway, I just like to give back to the community, and so I give 10% back first thing, and then the rest of it I put into savings, split it between savings, and some of it's going to go into my working capital, and then the rest of it's going to go back into investment on another horse. So I've sold a horse, I've lost, you know, that animal that I was putting time and energy and training into, so now it's time to get another prospect. Now you have to decide, do you want something that you're going to do a short-term sale on, or something that you want to invest a lot of time, so you want to get a little more quality, you know, prospect in. So those are some of those business strategy things it's going to take into account your business strategy. Are you looking for the longer term thing that you're going to spend more time on, or are you looking for something that you can flip a little shorter, a little quicker? So that's kind of dependent on, you know, my business strategy at the moment. But I really want to make sure that I put some of it in savings, because, you know, there's times you get sick, you get hurt, economy goes down, COVID hits, whatever it is, and you want to have a little cushion. So I put some in savings, and then the rest of it goes into working capital.
Are you, Ginger?
Pretty much the same. I kind of just have a little formula that I've worked out that works for me. And when I sell a horse, obviously I need to replace that horse, because I always have something in that, you know, I do a lot more long-term horses that, you know, put a lot of time into them, sell them for a larger sum. And I take a percentage, and right now I mean, besides regular bills like phone and stuff, I only have a trailer and a truck payment. So I actually have a savings account at each bank that I have those loans through, and I take a percentage out of any money that I make, I mean, even if it's not a sale horse, and I put it into those accounts. And you kind of learn, because just like your phone bill, if you do automatic draft on it, you get a discount. Well, it's the same on my truck and my trailer payment. If I just have an account and it auto drafts out, I save a little bit. It might not be that much, but as a horse trainer, we all know that every penny counts. Right. But I'm always ahead, and I like in those accounts, let's say my trailer payment's $350 a month. I like to have at least 5 months cushion in that account. So, and same for my truck payment. I think, you know, let's say it's $800, and that's a little bit, you know, that's substantially more. So I like to at least have 3 or 4 months in that savings account ready to go in case something happens.
How much do you invest back into horses?
Man, I mean, it's hard to say because each time is different and the market's constantly changing. And, you know, lately the market has just gone up and up and up. And, you know, where a year or two ago we could have paid $2,500 for a nice prospect, now you're paying $500 to $7,500 for a nice prospect. So, I mean, it honestly, all that depends on what I sold the previous horse for and kind of what the market is at that time.
Gotcha. What about you, Flynn?
Well, my situation's a little bit different than y'all's. On these horses that I buy and sell, I've got a partner in South Texas. He puts up the money. I buy the horses. I don't charge him for keeping the horses. He doesn't charge me any interest on the money. When the net check, we split 50-50. So after we pay a commission, we're pretty big on paying commissions to whoever helps sell it. I make a lot of commissions too. I sell a lot of horses on commission, and that makes a difference too. But I pretty well keep all my truck and trailer and all that paid for, pretty close anyway. I don't owe much on it ever. And so I just put some of it in savings, and I give some, I tithe 10% of course, and it just all goes either into savings or in checking.
Right. Apparently I'm always doing it wrong because I don't ever end up with enough money. True story, one time I tried to make a budget on my computer and it wouldn't let me because I didn't have enough money. Right? So that's kind of the bad spot to be in, right? But you know, what I try to do is this is kind of what brought up this whole subject that we're talking about today, right? Is that when you sell the horse and how you spend that money, you know, I guess directly affects where we go down the road. And what I learned by having a friend finally at the bank, right, and learning how the banking system works and how that can come into play with what you're doing, it really kind of changed the way that we start to think about things, right? Because when I started out, if I would have sold that horse for $10,000, basically you caught up on all the bills that you were behind on, right? Because it always seemed like to be, that's how it works in the horse biz. You catch up on all those things and then you try to pay off something, right? And then you have no money left, right? Because you think you're doing a good thing by paying off all this stuff. And then, you know, you take a little bit of that money and you go buy you another horse. But the thing that I learned with talking with these banks is that they're not going to ever lend you money on a horse. Right, that's not generally, I won't say it'll never happen, but very, very rarely does that happen. You know, I suppose if you've already got a breeding stallion who's breeding X number of mares, you know, I mean, and you've got stored semen and stuff, I mean, you got a certain
documentary.
Yeah, you know, you've got some way, but they want livestock, you know, cows, goats, pigs, because they can take that and they know what market value is today, right? They know what that's worth. So if you think your horse is worth $100,000 and you've turned down $100,000 offers and they take it to the local sale barn, the bank would do it, and that horse brings $1,000, that horse is $1,000 horse, right? So they're not going to cover you on that. And the one thing that I learned was that if you take that money and go buy a piece of equipment, right, and pay off that piece of equipment, you know, a big riding mower, a tractor, a new manure spreader. Now the bank will let you use that piece of equipment as collateral, right? And then just because that tractor's paid off, now you can use that to get a loan against something else, right? And that was one of the things that I never knew, right? Because I think as being in the horse business, you know, you just try to figure out how to survive rather than necessarily making it a business, right? And that's the thing. And you know, we had to learn things like you know, lines of credit, right? How those things work and what the bank looks for, right? Because they don't care if they give you a line of credit and it's never paid down, then that doesn't work for the bank, right? Even though they make an interest. But the other side of it is if you never use it, the bank never makes money, and then they don't want to give you back that money anyway, right? So you got to have it go up and down and pay off these things. So, you know, the beauty that I have with the guy that we deal with is, you know, he says, okay, we got to pay this and we're going to pay that. And these are, so basically every Monday I go to the bank and I say, this is what's going out, this is what's coming in, this is what we got to pay, this is where I want to do something, you know, in a week or a month, or I want to buy this. And then he just says yes or no, and then that's how we kind of allocate stuff, right? So I know that he's looking out for my interest because I've known him long enough, right? And that's what his job is. I mean, being a small town bank, right? So the bank that I deal with is a local bank with maybe 4 branches, right? Like everybody kind of knows everybody, you know. And I think then when you get into larger banks, maybe you get some better bells and whistles, but it's harder because you don't have that personal thing, right? And you know, and if those guys can really trust you, and you know, and I've been able to get a lot of things accomplished at the bank for the fact of every Monday I go in, right? Good, bad, ahead, behind, and I say this is where we're at. And so then they never question it because they know that you always, you know, you're always going to do that. And I think that was one of the biggest things that I had to learn, was just the collateral part of it, right? Because we got into a pickle, I don't know, it's been a few years ago, but when we paid off our facility, right? I sold a horse, got a chunk of money, and we went ahead and we thought, well, if we pay it off, then we can borrow against it to build a house. No. Texas has this weird thing called the Texas Homestead Law, right? And it is a nightmare to get around. I'm sure there's good benefits to it, and that's a whole nother subject, but the problem ended up being is that because I was a commercial business, right, with training horses, we only had X number of land. To be able to make all these things happen, you had to survey a right of way, have X amount of land, and where we were in the position is that because we were ag, if we did that, we lost ag. So then you have to pay regular taxes rather than being ag exempt. So we got into a pickle that we took that big chunk of money and didn't pay anything else off, but we paid the property off, and then we couldn't use it to do anything at all, right? So had we known that, so check out the Texas homestead exemption and find out where that is, because that's a tough pickle to get around, because they don't care. You know what I mean? You're either or you aren't. And I think it's 200 acres a person, right? So with me and my wife, that's 400 acres, right? So you can't get past it unless you're over that, you know, which most people don't have that anyway. So basically, they just get your thumb on you, you know, the property's paid off. We couldn't use a dime of it to do anything, where if I could have took that money, made the barn payment as normal, and bought a new tractor and a drag or something, I could have paid that off and used it for collateral and got something else done. But, you know, I didn't learn it.
Or use the money for the house.
I mean, I kind of got into a similar situation because at one point I just wanted to pay everything off, or I paid cash for everything. Well, I was so proud. I paid my truck off, and my credit score goes down, and I didn't understand. I'm like, why did my credit score go down when I paid something off? And so I kind of learned the hard way too, that you kind of do need those lines of credit to have the credit, because then when I paid that truck off, then it was harder to buy another truck when I needed it, which I just didn't understand. I'm like, how can I pay perfectly on time for 5 years, pay it off, and then my credit went down? So, I mean, there's so much that you don't realize. You think you're doing the right thing by paying things off, and then it kind of bites you in the butt, you know, when you turn around.
That's another thing with a small business, how you report your taxes. I mean, that's what the bank looks at, and there's a lot of cash coming in, and you can pay cash for things, and you don't have to declare this, and don't have to declare that, and I don't have to pay taxes on it. That's true, but when you go to the bank, they're going to say, hey, let's see your taxes. And you only made this much money, so you're not getting that loan. Well, you see, I paid cash for this, and the stuff that I couldn't pay, I couldn't deduct on my taxes. Well, and that hurts you later. And so being able to document everything, and it sometimes is more work to say, look, this is how much cash came in, this is how much checks I got, and then do the deductions, and that way you can claim it, and then the bank can say, oh, well, you actually made this much. Wow, all right then. And so they'll you know, you have to, the bank's not going to give you any money if you can't show that you're
That's right.
making income. So you have to show some income, and sometimes that's tough for a small business, especially if you don't have a like a CPA or somebody that's doing your taxes for you. That's a tough hurdle.
Well, and I mean, just like you're saying, for you, you know, you bank at a small bank. You know, it's tougher at a larger bank.
Oh yeah.
Because there's no personal relationship.
Right.
And I got really lucky that I was banking at a very small bank. And so they could look at the cash I deposited, but I still learned the hard way. You know, like once a bigger bank bought that bank out, it was no longer personal.
That's
and
right.
they had bigger rules to go by, and they had to follow whatever was laid forth by this new bank. So where before I could be like, I'm broke down the side of the road, I need a new truck. All right, send me the paperwork Monday. I couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Because then it was, well, we have this, this, and this. We need this, this, and this. Where before my banker just knew me, and he knew I was good for it, and I got the loan.
Right. You know, one of the things that I ran into was that because when we set up our account in the beginning, it was set up as a commercial account, right? So make sure that you have two accounts, a personal one and a business or commercial one, right? And try to keep that stuff separate. I'd always run it through one account because most of my stuff was through the barn, and you know, we had money from my wife working and things. But what happened was that for years, all of the trucks we bought, the trailers, everything that I bought went through that account in that barn. And one day I went to get a cell phone, and they told me it was like $2,000. And I'm like, what the heck, $2,000? Why is that? You know what I mean? I know the guy at the bank, my stuff's paid, everything. They're like, you don't have good credit. And I'm like, what? My credit score is like 520. Okay, so now I go to the bank, I'm like, what in the heck? He's like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, is that it was a commercial account and we didn't have to report any of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So hundreds of thousands of dollars have went through there, right, with stuff being taken care of, and just because the title on it was, one was commercial and business, right, and the other was my personal one, nothing. So just, I mean, those are little things that, you know, we want to share with you when we're talking about what we're doing in the horse biz. I mean, just little things that can make the difference, whether you know, it makes or breaks you, and you know, that's the hard part, right?
Yep. You bet.
Yep.
I honestly, I had the same thing happen recently. I bought a 5500 truck, and it has a flatbed on it. And apparently, when you have a flatbed, it's considered commercial. And I had no idea. And I went through a pretty small bank around here. And so I keep track of my credit score and make sure that my credit stays clean. Nothing's getting claimed on there that I didn't do. And I'm looking on it and I'm so confused. I'm like, why is my truck not on here? You know, like I make the payment on time every time. I keep the money in the account. And so I call the bank and they're same thing. They're like, well, that's a commercial.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
Right.
Like I didn't even know that when I purchased the truck that they considered it commercial. And he said, yeah, it's a 5500 with a flatbed, so it's considered commercial.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, you know, it's things you don't think about when you go buy a truck. If it has a flatbed, a lot of times your insurance considers it commercial, so your insurance price is different.
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize that till they bought the truck.
Yeah.
And then they go to pay for the insurance and they're like, whoo, what?
Right. You know, the other big thing, right? Don't buy new.
Yeah.
I mean, at least that's for me, right? Because you're going to take the hit on the depreciation right from the get-go. You know what I mean? It doesn't really make that much difference if you're driving a 20 or a 21, right?
That's right.
Yep.
You know, I mean, somebody's going to lose the money, rather it be somebody else, right? And you take it.
Yeah, those lease turn-ins are, you know, 2 years old, 3 years old, they've been well taken care of.
Yeah.
You know, somebody else has already taken the hit on the depreciation. You know, they're still really good trucks, and you know, those can be really good. One thing, you know, like I say, don't get in debt. You need some debt because you need to be able to show that you can pay it off, but at the same time you get overloaded. And I think this is something that the trainers, they see the guy pulling in with a new truck and a new trailer, and they're like, I want that. Yeah, well, the judge doesn't know what you pulled in. I mean, he's what you pull out of the back is what counts. And so, you know, if you're gonna sacrifice something, get something that's dependable and safe. If it doesn't quite look as shiny and as polished as the next guy's, that's okay.
Right.
It's way easier to make payments on something that isn't quite as shiny.
Yeah.
Well, back in 2007, well, it was 2009 by this time,
Yeah.
but I found over at Sherman, they had a 1-ton dually Dodge truck, and it was real cheap, but it was 2 years old, but it had never been off of it had like 27 miles on it where somebody driven it for a demo or something. And a squirrel had come in under it and chewed the wiring harness in two, so they had to put a whole new harness on it. But I kept that truck. I bought that truck a lot cheaper than anybody would have ever thought, and I put 350,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
And it was just perfect for all of that time.
And I want to elaborate because I just said, you know, I buy a new truck. So if I was home and I was just doing local hauls, I would probably buy a truck like that.
Yeah.
I travel alone a lot.
Oh yeah.
With a 6-horse trailer, and for me, I don't want to get stuck on the side of the road and get stuck with a large
Tow bill.
Yep. So I want my truck, while I'm traveling a lot,
Sure.
as a girl,
Yep.
I want to make sure that, you know, it's in warranty, basically. That's what I like. I want it to be in warranty, so that way if something happens, I can pull into the Dodge dealer and be like, fix it, let me know when it's done.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be stuck somewhere with a $6,000 bill and a tow bill trying to put my horses somewhere and figure out how I'm going to pay for it.
Well, speaking of truck wise, right? I know you drive a semi.
Yep.
You almost drive a semi because you got a 550. I've got a 1-ton.
Yeah.
And you got a 1-ton, 3/4 ton.
We still have. We've got a 1-ton.
Is there any savings on a semi over a dually as far as maintenance and going up and down the road? Since I know you've had a few.
Yeah, there definitely is some savings there. That's why, I mean, if I could afford to drive a dually around, I absolutely would. They are cheaper. There's inconveniences. They're not as easy to park at Walmart. You know, there's definitely some inconveniences there, but per mile going down the road, they're way cheaper. You know, like I say, they're not for everybody. If you're not, you know, it's hard to strap a baby seat in one. But, you know, like I say, just talk to some of the guys that are doing it. I buy ones that have 500,000 miles on them. Most of the engines are good to 1 million. The first truck I bought was Ford 800, which is like a city plow truck. I put 300,000 miles on it and replaced batteries and a set of tires. The next one I had was a 01 Volvo. I bought it with 700, ran it to 1 million. I bought it for 7,000, sold it for 5. Cost me, other than fuel, cost me 5 cents a mile to drive it.
Okay.
And then bought this one, put 100,000 miles on it. I paid 12,000 for it. And so, I mean, hard to go buy a truck that you're gonna pull a trailer with for 12,000, and you know. But at the same time, I'm pretty handy. You know, I bought a truck that had a kingpin, you know, just regular semi. Took that off. I'd built a flatbed that goes on it. Took one axle off. Both of them, I actually had the VIN number converted to a motorhome, so I converted the inside. It's got you know, refrigerator, stove, all that good stuff in it, so it's actually a motorhome, so it's not considered a commercial vehicle. So that's something that takes some time in doing too. So there's a lot of different, you know, aspects to that, but you know, like I say, it's finding the right situation that fits your deal. I travel a lot, So, and like I say, I haul a lot, pull a lot. I got a pretty good sized trailer, and so, you know, that's not as a big an impact to me if I can park it somewhere. And although I found out that you can park that truck anywhere you want for 45 minutes, because there's not a tow truck around that's going to hook up that thing for 45 minutes.
Right.
I will say, when I looked into, because I was wanting a big rig, and the only reason I didn't is because at that time I didn't have commercial credit.
Right.
Now, I guess now I do. I should.
There you go.
But when I looked into it, it was actually cheaper to run the bigger trucks than
Right.
it was to run. But I ended up going with the 4500 or the 5500, and same thing, because it's got the better tires.
Yep.
So they last longer. I mean, I just hit 70,000 miles, and I mean,
Yep.
they're still rocking along. So.
Yeah. The tires, brakes, and stuff like that, they're made to go.
Yeah.
You know, like if you look
everything's heavier,
Yeah.
like heavier duty, a little bit more heavier dutier, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like to say, I've talked to some of the guys that run the semis, and they're good for what they're good for. If you're going to do a lot of driving around and running around like a pickup, man, not as fun.
Yeah. Right.
But if you're going to leave it hooked up to the trailer all the time, and that's all you're going to really use it for.
Right.
I mean, like I say, I got a little runaround vehicle I used to run around, and I got a motorcycle that I actually put in the horse trailer, and it stays in one of the horse stalls, and
Nice.
I can use it when it's got like a little saddlebags on it. I can go run to town and pick up some
right.
stuff, and yeah.
I got lucky on mine, sorry.
Yep.
Because I bought mine in, I think it was 18, but it was a 2016 that no one had bought.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, I mean, there was nothing wrong with it. It didn't have wiring harness or anything wrong with it.
But I never had a problem with the wiring harness, so
Yeah.
they fixed that.
I mean, I got lucky that there was a 16 sitting there, and it was discounted pretty drastically, and it ended up being cheaper to purchase the 5500 than it was to go with the 3500, and everything was everything was beefed up on it.
Yep.
And my first question was, which is something, you know, that's probably a good question for people to ask, your warranty starts when it purchased, not in 2016. Because I was like, well, gosh, the warranty is about to go out if. So no, it started the date I purchased the vehicle. So that was nice.
I just keep thinking about Flynn's story with the squirrel, and I was wondering when they lifted up the hood if they were like, God, nuts. You know, I mean, I couldn't get that one out of there, you know. So let's let the pendulum swing back to the other end of the thing. So we talked about the larger stuff, right? So let's talk about the little nitpicky penny savers that really make I mean, to me, the biggest difference, right? Because time is money, right? Efficiency is money. You know, how you go about doing things, and this is where my help or people that know me just get driven crazy because of things, right? Because I always hang up halters a certain way, blankets are a certain way, and for me the reason is so that we know what's been done or not done, right? So when you think of sheets, blankets, sleazies, hoods, you know, all those things. So when you're taking those off and on, like if you just throw them over the blanket bars and they're a big wadded up mess of stuff, one, it looks ugly for one. But two, the time factor, right, is that if you take that blanket off and then you hang it up, and then you take the sheet and you hang it over top of the blanket, and then you take the sleazy and you put it over top of that, that's the order that they're gonna go back on in reverse, right? And if the neck holes are all the same way and you hook the leg straps all the same way, that makes it efficient. And it does not make a big difference if you only have 1 or 2 horses. But when you have 30 or 40 horses and you have to do that, and you do it in the morning and then you do it in the evening, and it takes you 5 minutes to do both, that's 10 minutes a horse, right? Times 30 or 40 horses, that's you know what I mean? Right. So now you're wasting hours and not just a few minutes, okay? So then if you're getting paid or you're paying somebody to do it, those things add up all the time, because now 2 hours a day is another 60 hours a month, right, that you're paying for, right? And if somebody's making $10 an hour, you know what I mean? That's a big, that's a big chunk of change just because the blankets didn't get hung up the right way, right? The way the halters are hung up is that, you know, I mean, I always rebuckle them, I hang them on the halter, you know, on the hook, when the noseband hangs out, I always do the lead rope so that it always faces the stall door next to it. The only reason is because if you hang it the other way, the loop goes in front of the door of the next stall. So you try to shut the stall doesn't shut because the lead rope's in the way, right? So the tail always goes to the door side, and you can look down there and then see what horses are in a stall, right? The way the stall doors are open, right? So if there's not a horse in the stall, I leave the latch sticking out, right, with the way mine are latched. So I can look down the barn alley and see maybe we forgot to put somebody out, you know, or put somebody in, you know. We can always look because you know, and if that's always done that way, then you always know that's what it is. And but you know, it's those, when you have help and they want to make more money, you know, they have to help you save that money, right? Because if they work more efficient and they save you $2,000–3,000 a month, I mean, you can ante up a little extra to pay them, right? But when they don't care about those little things,
that's right.
I mean, a lot of those things add up. So what are you picky about?
You know, it's funny. I've found out that everybody's picky about something. It's just different things. And so, you know, one person's picky about, you know, the way the halters, or the way, you know, they're saddled, or the way they hang their, a good one, how they hang their bridles up, right? I mean, you don't put those split reins exactly right. Somebody is like, you know.
I don't know what you're talking about, man. I have no idea.
And then, you know, the other guy, he's like, hey, like, if you don't check the oil before you start the tractor, you're fired, you know. And then, you know, if you didn't check the air pressure in the trailer tires before you left, and we blow a tire because you didn't check, now it's a $300 mistake,
right?
And so, you know, there's everybody's, you know, and I think for me, it's just, I try to keep a pretty even, like, I call it minimum level of competency. So, like, checking the air in the tires before you go. That's kind of a requirement. Do you have to check the oil every time you start something? No. Is it good? Good idea. Not required. You know, then, you know, same thing with, you know, do I want you to, here's how I hang up a halter. And then of course my guys, you know, I'm like, look, if you want to spend an hour blanketing horses, that's just, you know, it takes me, it'll take me half hour to do it, and if it takes you an hour, that's a half hour. I just can't teach you stuff.
Right.
So they figure out pretty quick, how come you did 4 horses and I only got 2 done? Well, I'm faster at it than you.
Right.
And so then, and here's how I do it, which is why it's faster. And then they go, oh, well, time is money, boys. And believe me, if you're not learning efficiency, it goes kind of back to what we were talking about with the intern thing. Time is money, and if you can do it faster, then you can ride more horses and do a better job, which means you can charge more. So, you know, it's that you know, which goes back into our, you know, money thing. You know, if you spend all day not getting very much done, it's hard to charge for it.
Right. Right. What about you, Ginger? I can't imagine you being picky.
So, you know, it kind of goes back to you, like, fat, shiny horses sell.
Yes.
Okay, for me, as a performer, it just kind of goes over into my training horses. I like everything to be neat and tidy and look presentable. I don't want my blankets strung out everywhere. Like, I like them all hung nicely. I want the halters hung nicely. If we're at a show and we have horses tied to the trailer, I will strangle somebody if they unhalter their horse and leave the halter on the ground. Like, that is just...
Another horse steps in it.
Another horse steps in it, or, you know, because it never fails. There's another horse tied next to it, and they turn around and get a foot caught in it, and then there's a broke leg or something, you know. So I'm a stickler on, you know, I don't mind that the halter's still there, but tie it back up so the other horse doesn't get caught in it. And it does. It looks nicer when people come by our trailer. It's presentable. We look clean. We look professional, and
keeping the poop picked up.
Yes, and that is so funny you say that, because I can't tell you how many shows I've gone to, and I'm just gonna say it, barrel racers, like, why are you cleaning the poop? And I'm like, because I'm not here for one night. I'm here for 4 nights.
Yeah.
So I don't want my horse to stand in their crap all weekend. And we carry a wheelbarrow with us, and every morning we get up and then we keep it cleaned up through the day. And then I have a couple horses that drink a lot, And so they'll pee a lot right there. So we go get shavings and we put shavings down around the trailer so it helps soak up the pee. So they're not we're not leaving a big mud hole there at the rodeo grounds. You know, and you don't, you know, you might not think that they might not notice that, but they do. And I know that they notice that I get hired back every year. Even by people that normally for a specialty act, you get 1 or 2 years and they change.
Yes.
And I have a lot of rodeos that will hire us back every single year because we show up, we're professional, we look professional, and we keep our areas clean. And a lot of times we'll clean up after, you know, there's always people that throw their trash out, you know?
Right.
So we walk around and we help pick up trash, and if the stock contractor needs help feeding, we help feed, you know? And it goes back to that work ethic and being helpful and making yourself presentable and making it to where people want to hire you.
Right. What about you, Flynn?
I don't do a lot to save money. I usually, my wife says anyway, spend too much, but
Is that why your pants hang low? You have so much money?
yeah. There are ways when we go to these sales off Shawnee, Oklahoma, to Fort Worth, Texas, Oklahoma City, and we try to do everything right. And we've got our own little, we have a copy of the horse's papers in a plastic deal on the stall door. I mean, not the catalog page, a copy of the papers. And then we'll have, lots of times I'll make a pedigree up and it'll show this horse, his mother won this much money, produced this much, and the next day I won this much and produced this much. And you can get on the computer and make them up and print them off. And then we nearly always have a professional made picture at the sale. And that makes a big difference. It really makes a big difference even.
Well, but I mean, how many horses do you sell a year?
Well, I used to.
Yeah, used to.
Used to sell between 50 and 100.
Okay, so I mean, you sell 100 horses and you make an extra $1,000 because of good pictures and a pedigree, right?
Yes.
That's a pretty big difference in the paycheck.
Yeah, but you can make a lot more than $1,000.
Yeah, right. I mean,
But that goes back to attention to detail.
That's right.
Little things that other people might not be doing at that sale.
That's right.
You just caught someone's attention because you had everything they could ever think of asking is right there on the stall.
That's right. And of course, we always, there's always 1 or 2 of us standing there around the stall, me or one of our helpers or something, and we'll get one out if you want to look at him or whatever. But one thing I do to pinch pennies is I have a special deal, and I don't know where I got this recipe for this stuff from a halter horse lady, and she said you take half baby oil, half conditioner from Walmart or whatever, and half Listerine. And the only reason you have the Listerine in it is to make it thin enough that it'll spray out. And you spray that on a horse every day around the house. Well, you get him out and brush him off. And when you put him back up, you spray him with this stuff. And that just, I turned a Palomino colt that was as white as this tablecloth golden by doing that on him every day. And that made a lot of difference in what he brought too.
What, does it make him slick if you're riding him?
Oh yeah. Well, no, it doesn't bother him much.
No. Well, you're not riding yours.
Well, we don't ride many hours.
Right.
Mostly mares and colts and yearlings.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's tons of those little things that you can find. You know, I mean, now the beauty is with the internet. You know, everybody's got, you know,
Tips.
some kind of a hack or a tip or, you know, ways to make all these things happen. And, you know, again, right, it may not work for you, but it may work for you.
I got a little tip. Do things, there's a lot of things you can do that you don't have to pay for. you know, or let me rephrase that. There's a lot of things that you can learn how to do, so you don't have to pay somebody else to do it.
Right.
And I pay somebody else to do anything that I think is going to be better if a professional did it. So if somebody's coming in and I can trim their horse, or I can trim my horse. Maybe I've got a yearling or a 2-year-old, and you know, whether he gets trimmed by a farrier or like I shoe some of my own horses, if it doesn't make a lot of difference, I don't do as good a job shoeing one as a farrier does. I'm all right, but I don't get the practice that one does.
Right.
So, but no, I can save a couple $100 that way.
Yep.
You know, if you can trim one, you can, you know, just a lot of little things. Making some tack, you can kind of repair a piece of. You know, it doesn't take very much to get a stitch and all, and you have to go buy a new bridle for $40, or you can fix this one because it, you know, got damaged or something. So there's a lot of ways you can kind of scrimp pennies and not have to pay an extra $50 for a new piece of tack that you can just fix if you had a little bit. Look on the internet and YouTube, and you can figure out how to, you know, make a halter. You know, I mean, now halters are $25, you know, $50. So you can get a piece of cord and make one up. So there's a lot of things you can do on your own, that especially the young trainers and those guys just learning, man, they can save a lot of money making some, you know, we've made some hobbles and this and that, and that's $50 here and $25 there, and pretty soon it's $400 or $500 that you've saved making some lead ropes and stuff like that.
Yeah. Now, talking about the money aspect of everything, and you'd mentioned earlier taxes and things. I mean, are you doing your own taxes? Are you sending that out? Are you a TurboTax guy and just kind of plug the figures in and hope?
No, I send it. I have somebody. I put all my stuff into the spreadsheet I have at home for my budget, and then every month, and then at the end of the year, I send it all in. Have a guy does the figuring, sends it in. So
gotcha. Do you do your own?
Nope. My stepmom is fantastic.
Well, my sister is a CPA, and she practiced it a lot more than I ever did, and so I just send them to her.
Gotcha. I don't do my own because, as you know, I'm too pretty for prison. So I send it to somebody who knows, right? But I'm sure you two, and probably Flynn, I'm like the odd duck of this whole crew and stuff, right? Because I'm sure you guys probably, you know, have meticulous records, right? As far as how you save your receipts and how all things go and when they go. And
mine's not meticulous, but you know, there's a file cabinet. Every time I get a receipt, it goes in the deal, and you know, it's here's January's, here's February's, here's March's. There's 12 little folders with.
Mine's more like a shelf that sits on my desk.
Yeah.
And then January's at the bottom of the year, and December's at the top, and it's like an archaeological dig, right? I mean, so if I want to know what happened towards the beginning of the year, I have to flip it over, right? And then that's where all the receipts are.
Lid on both sides.
Yeah, and I just flip it back over, right? So it's a system that works. You know, at the end of the year, I just sit down, I look at the receipts. And then, you know, that's a feed store receipt, and I just make a bunch of piles because we know where they have to go. And then literally, because, you know, I mean, my wife hates it for the fact of, like, I'm not a computer guy, right? So, like, I'll write them all down in a ledger, right? So, like, okay, you know, grain, this amount, hay, this amount, right? And I go back through, and then I calculate them all up. And then I put the totals at the top of the page, and then I take that to the tax person, and then they, you know, that's how they put the pieces together. And
yeah, I've got my bank's pretty good about having an app that goes with the Quicken or QuickBooks or, you know, whatever app you have, and it pretty much, like, I have my business account and my personal account, and my business pays my personal account every month my salary, and that's mine, and then the rest of it comes from the business account. And so when I log onto that and download all that information, it puts most of it in a category. So I mean, all my feed stuff goes into the feed, and then like I say, you just look through it and make sure it's all right. Oh nope, that one's wrong, it needs to go over here. And then so it takes 10 minutes a month.
So you'd said you pay yourself every month. So like when your horse money comes in, at the beginning of the month. I assume everybody's kind of on the first of the month kind of a deal. Is that you take in and pay yourself off the top, or do you pay yourself with what's left, or how do you make that work?
It's a salary that, like, hey, this every month, just like a truck payment. I mean, truck payment goes here, you know, insurance goes here, this goes here, and then to Mark goes in the personal account, and that's my personal money. And that way you're showing, hey, this is my personal income if I need something, you know. And then, like, say you can as it scales up, hey, I need to hire somebody. Well, we pay same thing, goes pay for stall cleaner, goes to, you know, whoever's. So I mean, I do think you need to pay yourself, because I think a lot of trainers, they kind of, whatever's at the end of the month is mine.
That's kind of how my game rolls. How about you? Do you pay yourself?
Sometimes.
If there's any left. What's left over?
In the category, right? I mean, you're retired, so.
Oh yeah, but I still have some expenses, but it's all out of one account now.
But when you were going,
it wasn't. Yes, when my wife had her account for the house, and I had a horse account, and yes.
Okay.
So, because I'm on the road, so I have envelopes in my middle compartment, and so anytime I leave to go, you know, let's say I got to go to Gainesville, Texas for the rodeo, well, I write Gainesville on it, and any receipt that I did that weekend goes in that envelope, and then it goes into my file cabinet for the taxes for that year. So that way it can be broke down a little bit more.
Right. I mean, you might find it hard to believe, but the console of my truck is like the other part of the archaeological dig. You know what I mean? So at the end of the year, I reach in and I grab those all out. And then I take those with
supplemental.
Me. Exactly.
Supplemental file.
Yes.
Well, a lot of businesses today too, they break all that down for you. Like Tractor Supply, they send us a deal every January, February, sometime there. Oh, last year you bought all this, and
this is what's tax deductible, and this is what isn't.
That's right.
Because I'm a little bit, you know, I like because you know, our feed store does the same thing, you know, because I have a tendency to buy a Snickers and a soda along with my 4 bags of grain and the 2 lick tubs, and you know, and so those 2 aren't, you know, so that's nice that that they send this little deal. Here's what you bought. It's not
You don't deduct the Snickers?
No. Like I say, I am too straight for prison.
I mean, I mean, what if you get hangry? I mean, that could be a business expense.
It could be. And like I say, I don't know. Like I say, I don't worry too much about. I mean, I'd rather pay a little bit extra taxes and not have to worry about it. And also, if I need to go to, you know, go get a loan or something, the bank says, you made enough that you paid this much in money in taxes. You must be making, you know, okay. So wait. So
so the next big thing would be property. I know we all have a little bit varying views on all the stuff, right? When I moved to Texas 30-some years ago, right, I had the opportunity to work for a cutting trainer. It was, you know, great guy, did lots of stuff, learned a lot of what to do, what not to do, and had the opportunity to meet lots of other Hall of Fame trainers and stuff like that. And you know, the reality of the business is when you get older and you've leased, at least this is my opinion, right, and you've leased something, in the end you have nothing to retire on, right? Because your facility, to me, ends up being your retirement and safety net when you're a horse trainer. And you know, so I didn't want to be one of those guys living in a travel trailer on the back of someone else's property because I didn't have anything. And I know lots of circumstances could happen that push you into that position, but one of the first things I made sure that I did was to try and get a place bought. And you know, you don't always necessarily have to go through a bank. I mean, you know, there's owner financing and land contract, and I don't know if it's as prevalent as it is, you know, now as it was, right? It was a little easier to get things done. And so we got our place bought and we got our place paid off. And you know, to me, that was always my safety net, right? Because at least I had that. And you know, a lot of other people are driving new trucks. I've got an 06, right? But my barn's paid for.
Right.
And you know, so to me, that was always a good thing. But we were able to do it because we got the opportunity to owner finance and make those pieces happen. And you know, I know you were talking earlier today about how you like to just lease or rent because you travel so much,
right?
You know, so you know, the benefit for me is, you know, there's success is different to everyone, right? And my version of success was to own my own place and to do that stuff, right? And somebody else's maybe win the fraternity and they don't care because they'll lease stalls. Sure. So you know, there's benefits that go with it, right? You know, semi,
overhead,
little truck, right? I mean, how those pieces go. So I mean, I always thought in my mind is if you're gonna pay $1,500, $2,000 a month barn payment, right? Like I would like to at least own it and not be at the whim of somebody else, because you know, if I'm renting off of somebody or leasing off of somebody and they decide they want to get out of the business or they want you out, you're gone, right? And then you got to try to find a place for 30 horses and start over. And you see a lot of that in the horse biz, that these guys just roll from place to place to place, and these big farms change hands, or you know, the ranches change hands. And then you know, at least I knew that I always had that little piece of security, right? That you know, was important to me. And you know, I mean, I've been in the same place for a long time. You know, been in Bowie like 30 years now, so I don't really plan on moving. Because of what we've got, and we've worked for that. So I mean, talk about what you do.
So I travel a lot, and I 100% agree. If you're gonna be in a spot for a while and you're gonna develop your training program around that facility, it's way better to be paying and investing that into a piece of land. Yeah, that renting thing is kind of throwing money away. For me, now the other side of that is, if you're putting that much money into a piece of land and you've got a facility that's nice enough that you like working out of it, it also means that it's expensive enough that you're probably not going to be able to go, I'm taking this month off, because you know, so there's the other. For me, I like traveling and I like going and seeing people and teaching people, and I lived in where it got cold enough that it was painful, and so I don't want to do that again. In Texas, like the frozen tundra moved in for like 3 days, and it was not good.
Don't fool yourself. It was 2 weeks. Yeah, it was well, hell for 2 weeks.
It sucked. So I like being able to go north for the summer and spend July and August in Michigan, where a heat advisory is 85, and then come south for the winter, and you know, it's barely freezes most of the time. So you know, because of that, I need a place that, when I'm here, I need a place that's good enough that I can ride. So it isn't, I mean, I would want to have a nicer barn and a nicer facility if I was going to be here a long time. But you know, for 3 or 4 months of the year, man, that's really nice. It's a comfortable place. It works for me. So I like that. It's not as expensive, and when I'm gone, I don't have to pay any board. Like my board bill is 0 when I'm traveling. Right. So that is also nice, because now I've got horses with me, and so it kind of depends on what your system looks like. Some people, they'll say, well, I know some guys that don't have an indoor. Well, and they were like, well, I'd rather not have to pay for that indoor and not have to have another 6 horses in training in order to make that indoor payment. And then the other guys are like, well, I really like having the indoor, and I'd rather have the extra 6 horses. And it's also an investment. That indoor isn't going to cost you the extra 6 horses for a lifetime. It's just until it's paid off.
Right. Well, I mean, you know, I don't have an indoor, but what I've learned talking with the real estate people and stuff is a nice asset to have, but it makes you absolutely no extra money, right? Because if it costs you $200,000, all it does is make your place worth $200,000. It's never going to make it worth $500,000 more, right? It's just getting by. Yeah. You know, so that's the big thing with it, right? I mean, that money you put is just that.
And it does make it a little nicer to ride when it's raining or when it's you know, whatever. But yeah, like I say, it doesn't make your place worth more. And so like I say, it just depends on, you know, what are you getting, what you paying for, and is that worth it to you?
Right. I mean, I like the sunspots and the wrinkles from just riding in the sun every day and getting beat down by Mother Nature. You know what I mean? That has character.
Well, I like riding outside. I mean, I've ridden in lots of places that have an indoor, and as soon as I could get outside, as soon as I thought they weren't going to run off when I walked outside, I was like outside riding. Why is he riding in the indoor? Because he likes riding out there in the woods. I mean,
well, right, isn't the irony when you build an indoor, one, you get convenience and you can always have good ground, right? But the whole time is if you have an outdoor, it's always too wet, right? So you know, or it's too dry, right? So you got to water it, and then you build a roof, and then you always have to water it because it's always too dry because it never gets wet. You know what I mean? So you never can win, right? And if you're a reiner and a cow horse guy, I mean, what are they going to complain about all the time, right? It's always the ground all the time. You know, the stopping ground sucks. It's too dry. It's too wet. You know, the end, whatever. You know. So how do you do your place? Well, I know, but go ahead. You live on the road.
Well, but we have 20 acres in Georgia, but you know, Kevin is home and I'm on the road, so we don't have an indoor.
Right.
And like this year, we ended up not taking training horses for a couple months because Georgia decided to have a monsoon season, so we would have had to take, you know, when we sat down, it was just easier to not take the horses than it was to have X amount of horses in training, to have to haul them. For us, the closest indoor arena is an hour. So we'd have to load 12 horses and drive to the arena every day. And for us, that just wasn't worth it. So instead, we just kind of cut our losses and we just didn't have any training horses.
Gotcha.
We had our personal training horses, and then we could just
ride or not ride.
We could ride or not ride.
Right. So, how was yours, Flynn? I know it's kind of the family place. But
yes, it is. A lot of the ranch is owned by my father's estate, which is all of us kids. There's 5 of us left, and well, 4, and one of them 2 kids. But and we own some property. I own some property, and we own our house and all of that, and we're just kind of hunkered down now, waiting to get retired.
Right.
We've sold some land lately.
Yeah.
The estate sold some land, and it's all brought pretty good price out there for what it was. And
real estate's always a good investment, right? They're not making any more of it. Price is always going to go up, right? So if you can get it, get it.
I think having an exit plan, like I've got a pretty good retirement fund set up, and so that's kind of my exit plan. But having an exit plan is important because you're not going to do this forever.
Oh crap! That's another day. Jeez.
My father bought 100 acres out there by us. In 1946 for $750. Not an acre. All total.
Right.
But it was 8 miles of dirt road out there at the time. Now there's a lake and it's paved road and there's houses and a country club on part of it.
Right.
Anyway, that place made us some money.
Yeah. And now, you know, just around this area, just talking about the Bowie area, you know, $4,000 to $5,000 an acre, you know, what, 50 years, 70 years? I don't remember what you said, but
70, you know, so 1946.
That's a pretty good return on the investment, right? You know, so we're kind of closing in on the golden hour now, and we'll wrap it up here. But as we always do, let's go back through and kind of give your final thought on, you know, business, you know, the horse biz, saving money. What's going to be your big tip to end it with?
Don't spend money that you don't have and can't pay back. Don't see if you can not go into debt as much as you can. Yeah, that'd be it.
Same. I mean, I feel like a lot of people don't set goals and budgets, and that is very important. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. I mean, that's how we were always raised, and I've stuck to that.
Right. About you, Flynn?
Well, I don't do that anymore, but just always try to buy a better horse than you sold.
Right.
That's the way I look at it most of the time. And I used to say, if you need a good horse, my phone number is,
Right.
and they could call me, but I won't do that anymore.
Right, right. You know, I think mine would be, I mean, just be happy with what you're doing, right? Because ultimately everybody got into it to probably have fun, right? Nobody got into the horse biz to be rich. You know, yeah, or be hated on, right, or be pissed off all the time. And you see that happen a lot, right, with what it is, because the stress and the finances and everything that comes with it. You know what I mean? Just realize that it's fun, and you know, everybody's making a living, and a lot of what you see a lot of other people doing is smoke and mirrors, right? I mean, it's not always what it's cracked up to be, right? And always, if you got the questions, ask, because most people are going to be willing to help you or advise you or tell you what they did or, you know, didn't do, and then you can take that for whatever it's worth and plug it into your system. You know, I always learn a lot when we have these discussions and we talk and everybody's viewpoint, because very rarely do we ever agree on anything. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's viewpoint is everywhere. And you know, that's the beauty of what the horse business is, you know. And we're talking about, this is a group of people that's kind of Western oriented, right? Can you imagine later on some of the other episodes when we have, you know, jumpers and dressage people here with the Western people, like how those worlds are going to be so different, right? So you know, I just want you guys to think about it when you're talking about the finances, and realize that, you know, I mean, it's a struggle and it's a game, and sometimes it, you know, it's not who dies with the most stuff, right? But it's a matter of having fun, enjoying the ride and the journey, and remembering why you were in the business. And if you make some money on the way, it's good, right? Because the one thing for sure with death is we're all going there. You know what I mean? You're not going to outrun it. So you might as well enjoy it, have fun, and you know, just kind of enjoy the ride, as they say, right?
That's right.
So we're going to wrap it up for this episode. Remember, if you have any topics that you would like to add, have us discuss, whatever it may be, and the links and the descriptions and below, go ahead and leave that. You can email us, text us, whatever it may be. We'll be glad to tackle that topic for next week, right? If we got multiple topics, that'll be good. So we've had the first one. Last episode was work ethic in the horse biz. Today was on just our tips and thoughts of how the finances work out. And, you know, I guess that's about all I have to say. So I'm Steve Kutie, Flynn Stewart, Ginger Duke, Mark Lyon. We'll catch you next week on Cuss and Discuss. As always, ride hard, be safe, and have fun.